Hello, Guilty Feminist. This is Deborah. We're starting an exciting new venture called The Road to Gilead, because I think that's what we're on. We're really seeing the rise of Christian nationalism in the United States of America. This is not an attack on anybody's faith or faith-based communities at all. This is about Christian nationalism, which is about the misuse of dogma for reasons of grabbing power and dividing communities. Now, I only learned about this because I was researching how we'd become so divided for my book, 6 Conversations We're Scared to Have. But it really alerted me that Christian nationalists had been in the United Kingdom strategizing, getting into positions of influence, and creating divisions for about 10 or 12 years. They're only now becoming visible. You may have seen that Nigel Farage has now definite ties to the ADF, the Alliance for Defending Freedom, who are a Christian conservative legal group, very instrumental in the overturning of Roe versus Wade. You may have seen he's also just hired a senior advisor who is a Christian nationalist who, you may have also seen he's just hired a senior advisor who is anti-abortion, and he specifically says for any reason, even the worst possible reasons. This is becoming more visible in the form of there was a group called the King's Army who are homophobic, who went through Soho recently, intimidating gay people. It's really, really rising to the surface now. Now, the reason I want to play you this episode today is we're recording 6 brand new live episodes. You can check those out on live shows, so you can come along live. But this is one I recorded a little while ago. Now, we did put it out, but Neil, the guest, is in the second half of the episode, and it was a long episode, so some of you won't have heard it, some of you will have missed that episode, and it's so important because Neil is where I originally learnt about all this stuff. Neil Datta is the executive director and founder of the European Parliamentary Forum on Sexual and Reproductive Rights. He's a real expert in how Christian nationalism has changed our women's rights, our queer rights, and what they're coming for. So even if you heard it at the time, he's really worth listening to again. And we're looking to get Neil over in January to do a community open space day where we come up with grassroots ideas. If you could put 17th of January in your diary, we are looking at a London base for this, but also we'd love to get other bases going around the country where we can ideally zoom into where Neil is. And go and create all of our grassroots ideas in the open space fashion together, and then come back together and in a central online hub and report back in is the idea. If you're interested in this, email guiltyfeminist@gmail.com and put Road to Gilead open space in the header on your email. Neil is an interesting, engaging speaker, and he really knows his stuff. He doesn't pull his punches. I hope you enjoy this podcast today, and please look out for all the rest of the podcasts in this first season that we're doing on the Road to Gilead. There are tickets available for shows. Some of these shows have sold out already, but there are tickets available for shows on the 10th and the 16th in London, and on the 4th and the 23rd have sold out. And the 6th of December, Russell T Davies, the brilliant showrunner and national treasure behind It's a Sin, Queer as Folk, Doctor Who recently made a very moving speech about the way LGBTQ plus rights is going, and also what we can do in terms of our resistance and the kind of stories we tell, which obviously he's an expert on, is coming to speak to us on the afternoon of the 6th of December. Grace Petrie will be my co-host. 2 p.m. at Soho Theatre. That will also obviously go out as a podcast. So get tickets because that will sell out in probably hours. I hope you enjoy this episode. I hope you enjoy the rest of the series. And I hope you come with us on this grassroots movement to rise up and resist Christian nationalism in our politics. Because if we don't, the way of life that we have now may very well change very dramatically. And I believe that there are enough of us and we can resist. In the United Kingdom, we have 3 years before our next election. There is time. Now, I know many of our listeners are listening from other countries and you are facing similar things. You need to beware now and find out how Christian nationalism is affecting your country, if indeed it is, and it probably is. So let's come together. Let's do some thinking. Let's do some strategizing. Let's be positive, encouraging, inspiring, engaging, all the things that draw people to us and allow us to have wonderful leadership that will lead us away from the road to Gilead. Let's do that 180 together. And now on with the podcast. Hello. So lovely to see so many of you back. I always say if you love an audience, let them go. If they come back, they're yours. If they don't, lock the doors. I really enjoyed the first half. I hope you did too. Second half, we have a treat. So in the book, I interview this person, and I've already talked about that. But I had such an extensive interview with him, and in a book, you cannot write out a whole interview because it just doesn't work. So you obviously have to be very selective. But I found him so fascinating that I thought what would be great for this show would be to bring him over from Brussels so he could talk to us. So he's here for one night only. He's literally just got off the Eurostar. And tomorrow he's got to go to Iceland. So I'm very, very excited to talk to him. Please put your hands together and make incredible woohooing noises for the Executive Director for the European Parliamentary Forum for Sexual and Reproductive Rights, Neil Datta. Hello, Neil. Thank you. Now, I'm terrible. Dan's good at keeping time, but I'm terrible. So I've set my alarm for 9:35. When that goes off, we've got 5 minutes, okay? So that's someone has to then stay in charge of that. We can't ask Neil, he's a guest. But you look important and authoritative. You've got glasses and a jacket. You seem like you know. So you're responsible for that final 5 minutes, okay? What's your name? Juliet, thank you. Okay, I trust you. Up until then, it's free reign. How are you, Neil?
Very well, thank you.
How was your journey over?
Perfect. Yeah, we got here on time, no stress, so glad to be here.
Great. And you were able to watch the first half from the wings.
Yeah.
So you're in the swing of the show.
Exactly.
So shall we just dive in?
Perfect, yeah.
Excellent. So Neil, I found you when I was looking for the answer to this question. In 2014, Orange is the New Black came out. I do not remember anyone saying anything negative. And there was a transgender character in that. She was played by Laverne Cox. Her name was Sophia. And she ran a beauty parlor in the prison, in a women's prison. And women would go in and she'd do their hair or their, beauty treatments, touching them one-on-one, no supervision. And I don't remember watching that and feeling anxious, like, oh my God, they're going to say this is the trans agenda. They're going to say this isn't right. This is dangerous. Blah 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 blah. I just remember watching it and having just thinking she's a great character. And I went back and I thought maybe I just wasn't in tune because it was before the Guilty Feminist. And I looked for all the commentators now that are saying this would be a terrible thing, and none of them were saying anything. And to the extent where I couldn't find any negative press or any negative social media at all. The Daily Mail had this incredibly positive article, it was Laverne Cox and a bunch of the other actresses, and they were doing some glamour shoot for a magazine, and they were saying all these wonderful women and how beautiful they all are. But Laverne was clearly the star, like she was in the front, of the thing. And the comments underneath the Daily Mail were all positive. And there was another one where she did a walkabout, like a meet and greet, and it said, the Daily Mail said, she met a little girl who was also trans, and it was a lovely, touching moment. And the people underneath were saying, this is such a touching moment. And one of them said, well, how does that little girl know she's trans? And that was it. That was the full extent of it. And I went, what happened? This seems to have come in, because it's so flammable, and I was like, what happened? And I was researching, and I found, because there was all sorts of other trans representation at that time, it was very, very positive, And I was researching and I found, Neil, you had written a paper about the anti-gender movement. And gender doesn't mean transgender. The anti-gender movement, the shorthand for gender is really women, like gender studies, gender-based violence, gender, anything where you'd say gender, all the DEI stuff, anything now, if there was a paper that said, you know, through a gender lens or anything like that. The anti-gender movement. And I read this paper with really interest, and I went, oh my God. And I emailed Neil, and I said, and I thought, well, I'm not going to get a reply. He's very important. He's, you know, European Parliamentary Forum. He's not going to reply to me, but I'll give it a try. And he emailed me straight back. And I said, I'm writing this book. Could I interview you? And he was like, yes. And we organised to jump on a Zoom, and I recorded it. He was so helpful. And he said, no, people need to know about this. So that's how I know Neil. Now, Neil, there's, you know, a lot of your stuff in the book, but obviously I can't put a big interview in. So I'm going to say to you now, because I want these people to hear it, because I was blown away when I heard it. Can you tell me when, why, what happened? Why was this? It was also, I remember on the Time magazine, Laverne Cox's picture on the cover, and it said something like a new frontier for human rights. Was, you know, trans people were having a moment. What happened?
Yeah, thanks. So the transgender issue, I have to point out that I'm not an expert in this area. I've been studying the anti-gender movement, and then the trans issue has come into this relatively recently. Now, the origins of the contestation around transgender rights, there's at least 2 points of origin. One of them goes back many, many decades and comes from the world of feminism itself. And this goes back to the 1960s, and this is basically a certain small group of feminists who have pointed out some areas of tension between the social status of women and women's biological role and specificities, and how this contributes to their historically lower social status. And so that has a certain merit in itself. But it never really got anywhere. It was a really very marginal intellectual discussion within the feminist realm. Then, more recently, and I would date this to about 2015, 2016, a much more professionalized segment of society identified the transgender issue as something worth investing in intellectually, and that is the anti-gender, the anti-rights movement. And so they took this up, and then they started exploring different ways that they could stir up certain things in there, and this forms part of their strategy of identifying areas where the progressives are themselves divided. So transgender is one of them, and then depending on the countries, prostitution/sex work is another area of division, for example, in France or certain Latin countries, and another one is surrogacy. But so they ran with transgender a certain number of countries, particularly in countries which are deemed too progressive in order to make significant advances eroding women's rights by challenging abortion frontally or LGBT rights, and so the United Kingdom falls into this. And so these organizations developed a whole range of different talking points, which then fed into the society, and that's where we are now.
So it's been a wedge issue deliberately pushed into society on finding things that there has been a mild disagreement on and then turning us against each other.
Exactly. I mean, there was a mild disagreement within the world of feminism, and then once the issue of transgender rights hit the mainstream public, then there's a certain number of issues in terms of transgender rights which are, you can approach it from a matter of principles and human rights. There's a certain number of gray areas there which require more thinking. And they picked on the gray area specifically, erected scarecrows to then break down. And this is where we get the polarization.
So they don't really care about trans people.
No,
that's not their target. They're using it to divide us, so we fight with each other. Exactly. It breaks down our movements. Yeah. But also, presumably, then they can get in, they have influence because they can kind of cozy up to some influential people or get in with changing laws. If they can change laws about transgender people, then what else can they change?
I mean, they can change laws on a whole range of different issues. When it concerns access to minors, you then establish a certain precedent, which you can then apply to access to abortion or contraception. So that's one example. Another one is the polarization and the falsehoods that have been communicated around this, which are then used to polarize societies. And this is most evident in a recent discussion that President Trump had with the Secretary General of NATO, Mark Rutte. The transcript of it is out in the press, where President Trump specifically says, yeah, before elections, I like to rage bait on trans issues because this gets the people riled up.
Are you kidding?
No, it's out in the press now. So.
Rage bait. And that's what it is. That's what it's been all along. They rage baited.
Exactly.
And I will say that I feel it happened at a time. It was thrown at a time when the things that I was talking about in the first half, about the way it was like immediately shoot back. So someone might go, oh, I've got a question about this, and about, well, you're that kind of person then, and we don't want you here. So I think our communities, our Stams, have not been very good at going, well, let's ask some questions here. I think it has been exacerbated by the way that the internet immediately wants to push people into another Stamm, in my opinion. However, it was always rage bait, and we have fallen for it. That there's a lot of feminists who've fallen for it. Do you think there are some feminists who are gender critical who know that this is being engineered by the far Christian right in America?
I'm not too sure that they know, but they're aware that the Christian right is active on this issue. And what I find very disturbing is that some of them are willingly allying themselves with elements of the Christian right. I mean, just one recent example of a few weeks ago, we have the UN Special Rapporteur on Violence Against Women, a woman called Reem Al-Salem, who is gender critical. Okay? She has her own points of view, which emanate from that source of feminism. But she spoke at a panel organized by an organization called the European Center for Law and Justice, which stands for everything against abortion, access to contraception, a whole range of women's rights. It's the European antenna of the American Center for Law and Justice, another one of the big Christian right litigation firms, whose leader was the attorney of President Trump during his first impeachment trial. So you're not just anybody if you represent the president of the US. She spoke alongside this organization. Now, we need to ask ourselves, people who are feminist and have certain transcritical views, some of them may merit discussion, but you're allying yourself with someone who is against 99% of all other women's rights. What's happening here?
Mm-hmm. And I think people don't know it. I think this is the information that we need. This is what I'm feeling about the Alliance for Defence of Freedom. It's Alliance for Defending Freedom.
That's right, yeah.
Alliance for the ADF. I know they're going to come in on sort of feminist grounds of saying, we need to. I know I can, because I follow what they do, and they're saying, we shouldn't have abortion at 24 weeks because a fetus can technically survive wounded, blah, 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 blah. We should bring it down to 12 weeks. And I know that's going to happen, and all of the debates that are going to go on and everything that's going to go on in the press is all going to be about the science and it's all going to be about a feminist view or a scientific view. What is behind it, 100%, is chipping away. It's the slippery slope till it's all gone. And we have to spread the word because it can seem really reasonable. They will present reasonable arguments. I debated Erin Hawley, who works for the ADF, who overturned Roe versus Wade at the Oxford Union, and all of her debating chamber language was all about the Constitution, and then you listen to her podcast that she does with her husband, and it is all about God, to the extent, I was saying this to you in the dressing room, that she says, if a young girl is a mother is unexpectedly expecting, adopt her, and then it's really good to adopt babies, and you need to teach the mother about Jesus, introduce her to Jesus, and I'm like, you're literally describing the plot of The Handmaid's Tale, everything except knocking her up. What are you talking about? Adopt this single mother and then adopt her baby. Like, she doesn't actually say adopt her baby, but she's basically describing that plot. But on the face of it, you would never know. So I feel like we absolutely need to be educating everybody in our communities. It's not coming from a reasonable place, and this is why it escalates so quickly. What is happening now? What are your fears, Neil, about how the anti-gender movement is going?
Yeah. Just on the point that you've just described here, it's very interesting because it illustrates what the Christian right and the far right have been doing for the past 15 years. And that is taking old religious ideas, which don't work in our modern Western, largely secular societies. And what they've done is taken these old religious ideas, put them in a type of washing machine that secularizes them, and then out come new human rights sounding language.
Yes.
And they are all doing this now. Even the representation of the Holy See at the United Nations does the same thing because they know that religious ideas don't work. So I think we need to recognize this for what it is, this reasonable language. Now, getting to your question, what's happening now? Okay. What we see is that there's been a huge evolution in the growth of the Christian right in Europe. When I moved to Europe from the United States 30 years ago, I was familiar with the Christian right in the United States.
Yeah.
And I thought, moving to Europe, well, we're much more advanced and cultured. This is not our problem. We've solved all of these things. I was a bit wrong there. So what we've been seeing is a growth of this movement that has taken on several phases. First, it started out as a religious idea, where the idea that gender ideology is a threat to Western societies comes from the Vatican and then spread to other religious ideas.
And by gender ideology, you mean women advancing?
Women advancing, sexual minorities having rights, and but mainly women advancing. All of this goes against the social doctrine of the Catholic Church, mainly, which is that human sexuality has as its only purpose procreation. So if you're engaging in sexual relations for another purpose than procreation, you're doing it wrong. And so if we understand it that way, it makes sense how abortion, contraception, LGBT rights all fits together within the same package. Okay.
So behind it are people who would only have us have sex if we wanted to make a baby.
Exactly. Remember The Handmaid's Tale. That's your...
Yes.
That's the only way that was the only reason for having sex.
So that's Victorian, the idea of the two kinds of sex being procreative and non-procreative, and non-procreative is kind of kinky somehow.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So, and is there white supremacy at the heart of this?
There's a certain element of white supremacy, which takes different forms. I mean, white supremacy is most easily understandable when it comes from North America, from the United States. The version that we have here in Europe is extreme ethno-nationalism, where basically, for example, we take some countries, I'll take Hungary because that's a very good example, where this idea that women and men have certain roles because that is the tradition of our country and our country used to be great, and women are beautiful and bountiful and make many babies, and the men are strong and valiant warriors. That's the form that it takes here in Europe. So is that the future they want? What if they could have their dream future, what would it look like? I would say we have at least 3 different variants of an ideal future. One is some version of Gilead, where you have some people, for example, our friends at the ADF, Alliance Defending Freedom, they would want to see into laws and policies the religious teachings come into reality. You have that version. You then have another version, which are more the ethno-nationalists, who have an opportunistic view of human reproduction, which is to make the nation great again. We need more Hungarians, more British, more French, more Lithuanians, whatever country. And for this, we need to have, strong men who know their role in society, women who make many babies, who are beautiful and know their place. And then finally, you have another aspect to this, which is, it's difficult to see how it fits, but we see it there. And these are the sort of oligarchic elites that we see, very wealthy people who want to see a deconstruction of the state, and with the deconstruction of the state is all the human rights equality protection that the state provides. So you have an alliance of the three different forces.
So is the third one like Elon Musk?
Exactly.
Okay, shorthand Elon Musk.
Elon
Basically,
Musk,
he has babies with 14 different women or whatever it is, and he's destroying, all funding for absolutely everything.
Exactly.
So when you see in America the DEI being taken away, and if you've got the word female or woman or in your, or Latino or something like that in your application for your funding, it will be flagged because that's now somehow anti-American to be a woman. I mean, it's insane. Did you see this coming? Did you see that this is how it would go?
Yes, not to this extent. But I absolutely saw it coming. And I mean, I think to understand what's happening in the US, there's so much happening right now that it's very difficult to get your head around this. So the way I understand it is that there's a three-phase approach taking place. The first phase, which is what we're seeing now, is that of destruction. So really dismantling the whole apparatus of state, which provides for guarantees for equality, human rights, democracy, and internationally for development and global health.
And social nets and things like that. So if you lose your job or you lose your leg, you're going to be all right because society says we help each other and support each other. Yeah. That's all gone. And all the international funding to make sure that people in Africa get,
Exactly. I mean, USAID, the US International Development Agency, was the biggest development agency in the world. It's now being dismantled. Okay, so this will affect millions of people around the global south. In the area that we're talking about here, women's health, women's rights, USAID was also the largest provider of donated contraceptives around the world. Okay, that's gone. And USAID used to procure the condoms. So this has and other contraceptives. With that being gone, the manufacturers are not going to get orders placed anymore. So we risk a long-term decline in manufacturing capacity of contraceptives for the global south. So that's something to keep in mind. They've also defunded a range of organizations, including the UN Agency for Population, UNFPA.
So the first thing is destroy everything, which we're seeing now. Do you think this crashing of the stock market is part of that? The tariffs is part of just creating chaos and disorder and destabilization?
I'm not at all an economics expert, but it does seem to fit within the same pattern. Break everything, and then we go to the next phase, which is that of consolidation. And so in terms of consolidation here, in the area that we're talking about, we can see that the United States will try to find other allies in other parts of the world in order to join its agenda of undermining women's rights and human rights. One tool that they have here is a pseudo-UN document called the Geneva Consensus Declaration, which asserts that there is no such right in international law to abortion. And so they already have a collection of 30-some states. One of the most recent signatories is the Russian Federation, and they are starting to use this in different international settings, so that this year is the 30-year anniversary of the Beijing Platform of Action on Women's Rights. That's the meeting that took place in Beijing 30 years ago, where Hillary Clinton famously said women's rights are human rights. Yeah. So that is being contested by the United States. So we see this consolidation.
The United States is contesting that women's rights are human rights.
Yes.
So they're basically saying we're not human. We're somehow subhuman.
Yeah. So.
I hate to ask what the third phase is, really. I don't really want to know, I don't think. Is the third phase ice cream for everyone? Is it, by any chance?
Yeah. The third phase is that of creation, okay? Where, and this is where has been a blind spot for many of us, where basically we know these anti-gender organizations, anti-rights organizations for contesting abortion rights or transgender rights or whatever. But they've been busy doing something else in the background over the past 15 years, and that is developing what look like credible alternatives to reproductive health services. So instead of family planning and modern contraception, you will get natural family planning. Instead of abortion access, you will get a crisis pregnancy center, which will dissuade a woman from accessing abortion through disinformation. Instead of in vitro fertilization, you will get the Billings method of, or you'll get what's called NAPRO technologies. So you have all of these things. They've been developed at a pilot project. They are written into Project 2025 as being ideally eventually supported. So if we go back to the example you shared in the first session, that high school that you almost went to called Gilead. Okay?
Oh yeah, the missionary school.
Okay. Yeah. Imagine that type of school, okay, created by a cult, but then they start opening it up to the mainstream public. Okay, then they hide the fact that it comes from a cult. They offer themselves as a viable alternative to another school, and then they start getting state subsidies in order to expand their reach.
Thus the dismantling of the Department of Education.
Exactly.
Because then we start up with all these religious schools, you kids have got nowhere else to go, and they go there and then they get educated in this sort of doctrine.
Exactly, so you have homeschooling, private schools, but then also the whole range of what we're calling anti-gender services, natural family planning and all of these things that is likely to be rolled out in the United States, but also through a certain instrument related to this Geneva Consensus Declaration that I've mentioned, is likely to be rolled out onto the global south.
How much is the anti-gender movement in Europe and in the UK?
How much? In terms of finances, this is something that we've looked at. We did an analysis over the period 2009 to 18. We found that for 54 main organizations we could get details on, there's at least $700 million going into this movement in Europe. We're updating those figures now, so from 2019 to 2023, so only 5 years, we're easily at $1 billion going into this movement just in Europe. And so that's more than a doubling of the funding for anti-gender, anti-rights activism in Europe in the past 5 years when we've known about it.
How positive are you that the people of Europe and the people of, I mean, we feel we're in Europe, but there was, I don't know if you heard about Brexit, but the people of the United Kingdom will stand up against this and say, we don't want to live like this here, and how much are we sleepwalking into this, and do we need to be causing a lot of noise about it and starting grassroots movements against it?
There's both positive and negative things. On the one hand, at the positive level, thanks to people like Mara that we heard earlier, there's been some positive changes in abortion laws in about 15, 20 countries around Europe. So that's positive. The more worrying thing is that we have the rise of far-right political parties in every country. I've seen opinion polls here for the UK. Reform is ahead of all the other ones. And I'm half French. We almost had the far-right in power just last June. And you have the same story across every country. We're 1 or 2 election cycles away from a major accident. And these far-right parties have all taken on board anti-gender, anti-rights platforms within their party positions. So I think we need to be mindful that this is a real risk, and also the risk will not be a frontal attack on abortion rights or LGBT rights. It will come through the side door, through political parties who are likely to nibble away at rights that we think are well guaranteed, but they're not quite as well guaranteed as Mara pointed out in terms of for example, the status of abortion law. So
if reform gets in, do you think that they have this anti-gender movement within them or behind them, or is that where they'll be funded? Like, how much are they aligned, do you think?
A number of the reform and some of the people from the Conservative Party go to the same meetings where Alliance Defending Freedom is a keynote speaker. So there's one meeting called the National Conservatism Conference. It took place in Brussels last year. We had Suella Braverman there, Nigel Farage. So we have people from your own political parties who go to international gatherings where these issues are discussed. So I can't even imagine that they care about it. They just see power there. I don't believe that Nigel Farage cares about whether women have abortions or not. I think he cares about power, and he sees that there's money and power there. Same as Donald Trump. Donald Trump, how many abortions will Donald Trump have personally paid for? or said he was going to pay for and then not done it at the last minute, probably. But so it's just a route to power, really, isn't it? It's for a certain part of them, it's opportunistic, okay? But if you, the one way of looking at it is go back to the first Trump administration, okay? You had 3 key figures there. You had Trump, Vice President Mike Pence, and Steve Bannon, Okay? Each one of them has a different perspective on things. Mike Pence, in a strange way, is the most sincere one. He genuinely is religious. He believes abortion is killing a fetus, etc., etc. Okay? His position is sincere. Steve Bannon represents the ultra-nationalist. He wants more white babies. Okay? And so we need to reduce abortion in order to have demographic growth of a certain desired group. Trump is a pure opportunist, but you can see that by him allying himself with these two other groups, he gets access to power. It's Anne Applebaum. She's a Pulitzer Prize-winning author. She wrote an article about how to create a far-right party, and she had a rather nice anecdote. She described it as creating a boy band from the 1990s. Okay. So with this boy band, if you go back, you know, like which one was your favorite, Take That, or New Kids on the Block, whatever, they basically all follow the same formula. You have the perfect son-in-law, the bad guy, the sporty guy, the one with an ambiguous sexuality. Each one of them appealed to a certain demographic. And this is what the far-right parties do. You have some that they need the Christian vote that gets them 15%.
They're so
you need
strategic.
The far-right, you get another 10%. You get this one, that one, and this is how they get to power.
And this is so strategic because I think they've also looked around and gone, how are young women influenced now? By influencers. We'll get some of those. That's what trad wives are.
Yeah.
Oh, look, I'm this pretty blonde woman in a kitchen with a handsome man who looks like Matthew McConaughey comes in and kisses me. I've got 6 babies and, oh, I love it. And now let me make you some, you know, handmade Fruit Loops. Like, what? And but it's like, oh, we'll make it aspirational. They're strategic. We are not strategic enough. We keep going unless it's perfect. Unless everybody ideologically agrees, we can't move forward. And this is why I really wanted Neil to come on and why I wrote this book. We have to get organised, we have to move forward, we have to work with people we disagree with, and we have to stand up to this, because otherwise we are going to be, in our lifetime, I fear, living in a version of Gilead. Yeah. Is that scaremongering, or do you think that's possible?
I think it's a very real possibility. I mean, and for that, I take a look at the Russian Federation. I studied Russian when I was at university, and I was there in the early 90s when it transitioned from the Soviet Union to Russia. It was a land of a great deal of promise, democracy, etc. And now, in the space of just a few years, we can see the descent from a limited democracy to sort of authoritarian, and I would say it's really a type of fascism light. It's happened very, very quickly in just the past few years.
And the anti-LGBTQ agenda there has been creeping, and is now off the charts.
Exactly.
And this is the thing we have to remember. I always remember you told me that what made them come to Europe. Can you just say what made them come to Europe in the first place in about 2013 when they came over?
Well, a few things made them come to Europe, but one of the things that made them come to Europe, specifically at that time, was the fear that they had that the United Kingdom and France were both going to go with equal marriage at the same time. They saw that their equal marriage was not going to be some exotic specificity of uber progressive countries in the north. They were losing, in their mind, the 2 pillars of Western democracy, France and the UK. And so they had to organize, and this was the catalyst for that. And they came here and had a secret underground conference. Yeah. But you now have the minutes of that meeting. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, They met in the first meeting was here in 2013 in London, to create a network called Agenda Europe, which would meet in secret with Chatham House rules every year, and I think they're still meeting now, in order to coordinate, strategize how to roll back human rights in sexuality and reproduction. And I remember one of the things you said is they thought we're losing, so we've got to stop asking what do we want, and we've got to start asking what can we get. And they've chipped away since 2013. 12 years later, they are getting a lot. They have got a lot. And we have to start asking that same thing. We always go, well, if it's not ideal or it's not perfect or there's any compromise. No, we've got to start asking what can we get. We really have to. Questions from you. Has anyone got a question? And you can ask me a question anytime, so you should probably ask Neil a question. I will answer one, but I'll try and be really quick because I want Neil to have as much airtime as possible.
Maybe. In the world of Instagram and social media, when we do only have maybe the 60 seconds. How do we spread the word about this kind of stuff? Because the rest of the world, or certainly the rest of the UK, aren't going to come and listen to this, despite the fact that they should do. So
this will be a podcast, and you can spread it on the Guilty Feminist podcast. But I don't know. Neil, any ideas? How do we spread it?
Well, what I've observed is that the anti-rights movement has been particularly skilled at engaging with social media in a way that the progressives haven't.
Yeah.
So I think we need to skill up and then engage with social media as well.
We absolutely do.
Start a girl band.
Start a girl band. Yes, absolutely. The press aren't covering that. What I don't understand is there's academic symposiums going on. This is all in the book too. Going on all over Europe about the anti-gender movement. Academics are worried. They're putting money into it. They're having seminars. They're having conferences. This is all absolutely known by academics, but the press don't write about it. And I feel like we just need to get a campaign going about this so that that's what's on the front page, not like, you know, and then the trans people being in your loo is a complete wedge issue being used to divide and distract you, because they see all gay, bi, and trans people all as just against God and nature. They don't really discriminate. They just want no queer people in our communities, and we have to start spreading this. We have to start talking about it. Any other questions? Any other questions?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
I've got a question about social media, and I'll quickly just explain how a couple of my male friends have been radicalised right. They wanted to give up porn. There are lots of activists on YouTube. There are people on YouTube who are like, take control of your body, take control of yourself. This is the science of what watching porn does to you. They then watch those videos. They're completely benign. There is nothing even subtly dodgy about them, other than maybe conveying a kind of toxic idea of masculinity. They then get suggested early videos by Jordan Peterson.
Mm-hmm. And they go down the rabbit hole.
And then they go down a rabbit hole, but it is boiling a frog. You don't realise it's happening. And social media is owned by the people who are paying for all of this stuff to happen. So it feels to me, is there any value in us still using social media? And I've got a very small point on Russia, but people always ask what Russia's aims are, you know, as NATO, all of its absolute bollocks. It's genocidal. They don't believe the Ukrainian people are a people, but they also desperately need demographically millions and millions of Christians to replace their falling birth rate, because their demographics are falling and non-Christian groups' demographics are rising. Where can they find millions of Christians that they can tell are Russian, that are Orthodox, in Ukraine? So that's just a separate point. But the first one is social media. What are we doing? Basically giving money.
Because two men own everything, and they seem to be broadly one of the boy band members. So what do we do? Can we create our own spaces? I feel like we need to be in rooms, in communities, organising face-to-face. We need to get email addresses from people. We need to sort of, I think, maybe withdraw somewhat from assuming that's the best town square. But I don't know. What do you think, Neil?
I think we need to have a drastic skilling up of our capacities in social media and communications. I mean, people like Mara, and there's many others, you know, are doing excellent work, but it's not as present as it should be on social media, whereas this is really simply a question of capacity. We need to really invest in this so that we can also occupy a certain media space. And then there's a separate issue of the algorithms and the control by a certain number of very few individuals. That's something that we need to raise to the level of the legislators for them to see about doing something. Mm-hmm. And it's not just social media. In an increasing number of countries, what we're seeing is that traditional media is also being captured by right-wing or the far right. You have the Rupert Murdoch media here in the United Kingdom. Same phenomenon is happening in the French-speaking space and a number of other media spaces. So I think we need to take a look at social media and also traditional media.
Yeah. But I think we need to get into rooms, and we need to become strategic and, I'm going to say, manipulative. We need to start manipulating these systems, because these systems are manipulating us. We need to start turning it around. We need to get super smart people who know about this stuff. We need to hire firms. We need to find funding from progressive people who don't want to live in Gilead, and we need to find PR firms. We need to not be like, oh, I've made some jam. Put it on the social media, and by the way, guys, feminism, like we need to be like, I think we need to hire like, I don't know, Saatchi and Saatchi or someone like that. I don't know who it is. Over here, we've got loads of hands. Oh, I know, but you're doing that thing of privileging this side. Oh, they're in the middle. Okay.
I've got. Is it working? Yeah. I've got the mic here. Hi, I'm a philosophy lecturer, and I teach early modern philosophy, which doesn't really engage with much of these present-day issues. But I do teach a module called Hidden Voices in Early Modern Philosophy, where we read early modern women's philosophy, and one of the things that we do is we read the kinds of responses that 17th century women made to men around the same time, and medieval men who were kind of giving arguments that, you know, women weren't human and therefore didn't deserve the same kinds of rights, and so on. And my usually female students end up very, very glum when we read this kind of stuff, and they kind of end up looking at me saying, well, why does society hate women so much? Why have they always hated women so much? And I'm not sure what to tell them. They, you know, some of them get angry, but most of the time they're just glum. Like, you know, until I don't know, 10 years ago, I could have told them that things were getting better, but they're not. And I'm not sure what I'm supposed to tell them.
I mean, there is obviously a strong strain of misogyny in our societies, and that has been historical, and it's obviously still there. One thing I will say is I talk in the book about backlash, and there's an amazing book called Backlash where the author talks about feminism being more like a corkscrew than a ladder, and there's always I call this the Empire Striking Back. And I think the fact that the Empire is striking back means we are winning. And we cannot give up now, because they want to exhaust us and they want to dismay us. But you look at the grounds women have made in the last 100 years, it's exceptional. And we cannot give up now. We can make that ground again. Over here?
Yeah, so for a bit of context for my question, I'm from Lithuania, and we also last year had an election, and before that election, we had a party in the parliament that was mainly very young progressive people trying to make a lot of positive change for LGBT human rights generally. And you need a threshold of 5% of the votes to make it into the parliament. They came at 4 point something, so they came short. And I follow them on social media. They post about what they're doing while they're not in the government, like other initiatives. And someone commented saying that they didn't make it because they tried to do too much and they were too radical. And that made me very angry, because the people on the left, the liberals, are being constantly told that they're too radical, they're trying to do too much. The people on the right are not. They go full force with full anger against everyone, and they're not being told to tone it down. But we are, in order to achieve something. So how do we combat that, and why should we be the ones toning it down?
Great point. That's a great point. I always hear now liberal overreach. This has happened because of liberal overreach. I'm like, but where's the middle? Someone said to me the other day, Nigel Farage is sounding really centrist. I went, that's how far right we've gone. He stayed the same. You're right. Neil, do you have any insight or hope?
Yeah. I would say that whether a certain political party makes it in a given election or not is not so important in a longer scheme of things. What's important is to take a look at the ideas that this party espouses and see how it is that these ideas can then filter into other political parties. Think a bit about the Green movement that started way back in the 1970s. It started out as a small fringe movement, but then green ideas then infiltrated all the other political parties and have become mainstream. They're not entirely welcome in everywhere, and we know that some parties are more or less like that, but at least perhaps that's an example. So really to promote the ideas.
Neil, my alarm didn't go off, and I realised it's because I set it for 9:35 in the morning. So Apologies to our incredible tour manager, Stuart, who is very long-suffering. But fortunately, I have realised right on the dot of 9:40, which was when the last moment was that we needed to be out. It's now 9:41. I grant you we have run over 60 seconds. However, I don't really want to stop here. I want to have more shows like this. I'd love to get Neil back again. I'd love to do more with Mara and Felicia, and there's a whole network of people that they know. I do think this has got to be a long-running project for us, and I don't think there's anything more important, because in 5 or 10 years, we just don't want to be living in a world without rights and where queer people have to be underground and women are running frightened and having illegal abortions again. Like, we cannot have this happen. So if we have more staff, can I please just say, it's so hard to reach you by Instagram now because I'm all shadow banned and I have to pay to boost posts and stuff. So if you would all sign up to our mailing list, I'm trying to go back to email as much as possible. Tom, how do they do that? Just go on the Spontaneity shop?
He's left the room.
Useless. Anyway, Tom, how do people go on the mailing list? It's really important. Well, where are you? Where are you when I need you?
Come here.
Go to the Guilty Feminist website. Okay, I'll tell you what, guiltyfeminist.com, go to that. In the morning, what will be up at the top is this is how you join the mailing list. I'll get Tom to put it up. Also, I had... how do you join the mailing list? Just go to guiltyfeminist.com. Okay, thank you. So, guiltyfeminist.com, and also a very transphobic reviewer whose main thing seems to be on Wikipedia, transphobia, reviewed the book in the Sunday Times, and it was mostly about me, and it was awful, but it was fine. I mean, you know, I expected it to happen, but then J.K. Rowling retweeted it. The only reason no, it's fine. Look, they put me on the map. But the only reason I'm mentioning it is because I think what's going to happen is all the followers of J.K. Rowling will not read the book, but they will go to Amazon and Waterstones and Goodreads, and they'll give it a fake 1-star review. I'm not asking you to give me a fake review. I want you to read it and give it the stars you think it deserves. But if you're reading it, I don't want it to be artificially plunged. So if you're reading it and you're enjoying it, please go on Goodreads, Amazon, Waterstones. I hate Amazon, but you know, that's the world we live in. And give it and if you can give it a what you think is a fair or even slightly inflated review. Listen, we've got to get strategic. And if you could join the mailing list, then I think we're just going to get some town hall community stuff going. I've really wanted to do this for a long time. Where we meet on a Saturday afternoon in a room above a pub or a town hall, and we go, what the fuck are we going to do about this? And we get some grassroots things going. My new motto is start small, think big. Because I think it's too hard. You think, oh, it's too much. But what if we did something small, one small thing, and we built it, and we shared the work? Because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of emotional labour, you know, all that. So that's what we're going to try and do. Neil, we've got to go. Is there anything you'd like us to do for you, or you think we should be doing?
Well, I would just say, I would echo what you've just said, to read your book, because what you've done with this book is amazing, which is to take sort of the nerdy, weird hobby that I have in monitoring these anti-gender, anti-rights groups and made it accessible to a mainstream audience. So thank you for that.
Oh, delighted.
And I think that's the best thing that people can do to really understand what's happening.
Well, you were so instrumental in helping me uncover this stuff, and I can't thank you enough. Could we give you a follow or something on social media? Neil Datta, Neildatta. And, you know, follow us on socials. If you can rate, review, and subscribe to The Guilty Feminist, that really helps us pay for stuff. Anything that you can do along those lines. If you join our Patreon, you just get ad-free stuff, but it just helps us with money to, like, hire a hall or have another show or pay a guest or get Neil over on the Eurostar. So all of those things will help. I really appreciate you coming out. This is my last night of my book tour, and this has felt really, really special to do something like this, where we're not just talking about the book, but we're talking about what we can do, which is the whole last chapter. If you did buy the book, or you want to still buy it, I'll be out there signing, and you can have a selfie if you want one or whatever. It would be lovely to meet you. I feel quite moved, as this is the last night of my book tour. I am doing a show with David Tennant at the end of the month. It's sold out, but more tickets will be released tomorrow. So if anyone wants to come to that as well, you're very welcome. Other than that, I will do more events. I'm going to do other stuff at book festivals and other events, because I do think, not because it's all about my book, because it's really not. It's the least important thing of this. The important thing is we fucking fight this. We have to. We have to. We have to. Next time you come to whatever we do, try and bring a friend who doesn't know about this. Bring someone who's politically not very activated. Bring someone who likes the traitors. I love the traitors, but you know what I mean? Who goes, oh, I don't know about that. We need more people who think politics isn't for them. We need more people to go, if it's not for you, a horrible life will be for you. You have to come along and get on board now. We stop arguing with the people on the far right and start activating the people in your life or the people in your WhatsApp groups who would be terrified about this if they heard it and would join in, who are nice people. That's what we need. You've been absolutely amazing. Can I have a big, big round of applause for Neil? Thank you for coming. And for Mara and Felicia and Dan, the good people of the Bloomsbury Theatre. We've been the Guilty Feminist. I've been Deborah Frances-White. Thank you and good night. You have been listening to The Guilty Feminist with me, Deborah Frances-White, and my very special guest, Neil Datta. The recording engineer was Chris Sharp. The Guilty Feminist theme tune was composed by Mark Hodge. The producer was Tom Selinsky for the Spontaneity Shop. Thanks to Gina DCO, Zainab Mohammed, Stuart Arnold, Phil Turner, and everyone across town, and everyone at the Bloomsbury Theatre, as well as all of you for listening. For more information about this and other episodes, visit guiltyfeminist.com.